Good afternoon, everybody. This is our opportunity to present the latest three of the last four officer-involved shootings to the community and kind of give an update of where we are. I just want to kind of hit this really high level. We've talked about this. We talked about this during our earlier press conference this week. Somebody's mic's not working.
Yeah, the mic is just getting a little interference. Just
Shuffle around. Everybody's mic is.
move it over here, maybe. I'm sorry about
No,
this.
that's okay.
Chief.
Look, let's put it up.
Yeah.
Right there.
Can I just hang that right there? Like
You
that?
can hang that right there.
Sorry,
You good with
everybody.
that? We'll figure it out. We're going to start over. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today as well. We give an update of three of our last four officer-involved shootings and kind of be transparent about what occurred. One of the high-level things that I want to touch upon is just the fact that our officers are now seeing more and more incidents where we have individuals who flee from officers unarmed. At this point in time, they arm themselves with a firearm as our officers are pursuing them, and the end result is the individual is shot by our officers. I think it's important to note that a lot of these cases involved felony crimes, and it's these individuals who had histories that would put them back into the criminal justice system and incarcerate them for longer periods of time. And it seems that at times, though, that is a factor is why the decision making that they're having is that it is that fear of going back into the criminal justice system. And with that, and for the details, we're going to turn it over to Commander Hartsock, and then we will give questions. We'll take questions afterwards. So thank you.
And just so you know, we're going to go through all three of them, and then we'll take questions on the three. Just gonna clip this on. Is that fine? Does that still work?
Yes, all good.
So my name is Commander Kyle Hartsock of the Criminal Investigations Division, which includes the Multi-Agency Task Force, who conducts criminal investigations on our serious and deadly uses of force. First incident we're going to talk about today occurred on November 21st, 2023 in the 2800 block of Vail Avenue Southeast. This critical incident community briefing will provide information about a male who ran from officers while armed with a gun and resulted in an officer-involved shooting. I'm going to read this disclaimer just on the first one. You're about to see relevant video footage and photos and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case, so you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The Albuquerque Police Department conducts very thorough criminal and use of force investigations that typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, review hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the early stages of this investigation, which can often take several months to complete. Our understanding of the incident may change as this additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw any conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution: the images and video may be disturbing. When police officers use force to arrest a subject or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language shown by those in the video. The first shooting involved Officer Zachary Earls, who fired his weapon. Zachary was hired in 2021 by the Albuquerque Police Department. He has no prior officer-involved shootings, and he is back on duty. The subject that was shot by officers was 25-year-old Albuquerque resident Pablo Pacheco. This incident took place in the University Area Command. And it began in the 2800 block of Vail Southeast, which is an apartment complex. A resident called 911 stating that an unknown male, as she described as a Hispanic adult with a gray shirt, black duffel bag, and a backpack, was in the apartment complex pointing a handgun at seemingly random individuals. Officers responded to this call for service and located Pablo Pacheco, who matched the physical description given by the 911 caller. Pablo began running away from officers on their initial contact attempt, and eventually, during this foot chase, dropped 2 bags in the parking lot. Officers continued to chase after him north through the parking lot. west on Vail Avenue into the front yard in the 2800 block of Vail Southeast. Officer Earl stated in his interview that as he pursued Pacheco, he saw Pacheco arm himself with a handgun while still running in a full sprint. He stated that Pacheco began to slow down as he reached a corner of a residence in the 2800 block of Vail Southeast, and that he was fearful he was going to turn the corner and ambush Officer Earls. He stated that as Pacheco slowed down, he feared Pacheco was getting ready to shoot him as the gun swung in the arm back and forth, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. Here's video from Officer Earls, who does discharge his firearm.
Stop! Albuquerque police, you're not free to leave! Stop or forcibly using that shoe! You're gonna get shot! Stop, you're gonna get shot! Stop, you're gonna get shot! Stop! Stop, you're gonna get shot! I'm gonna shoot you! God, God, God! God! Drop it! Fuck! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Let her go!
This is still shot from the video you just saw, showing the gun coming out of the waistband or pocket area of Pacheco as he ran, and the officer identifying the firearm. This additional shot shows the firearm hanging down at the side as Pacheco is running away from Officer Earls. A total of 4 casings were located on scene from our officer's firearm. In this photograph, you can see where Pacheco landed by the vehicle, the red circles highlighting where his firearm was found. The cones are indicating where the blood trail started as he was shot and continued to run until he fell. This is a closer view of the handgun that was recovered, that was on Pacheco as he ran. 2 impacts from our officer's gun were found on a residence nearby. No one was home at the time, and we did recover one of the projectiles. A search warrant was completed on the 2 bags that Pablo had dropped at the beginning of the incident. 2 blue pills that we believe to be fentanyl were recovered, as well as an additional firearm magazine and a pocket knife were also inside the duffel bags. The magazine was not loaded. This is the actual firearm that Pablo was armed with at the time. It did have 1 round chambered and 5 more rounds in the magazine. An e-trace was conducted, and we were able to make contact with the owner out of South Carolina, who reported that the gun was actually stolen more than a year earlier, but had not reported it stolen. There was no NIBIN links to this firearm. Pablo was wounded that day and transported to the hospital, but did survive. In his interview, he stated he was under the influence of Xanax, does not remember the incident, and does not remember having a gun. During a search of his phone, we found messages to friends or significant others indicating that he was suicidal that day. And those were the messages he was sending out to people on his phone. On December 26, 2023, after Pacheco was booked into jail, a grand jury indicted him for possession of a stolen firearm, aggravated assault, and aggravated assault on a peace officer. A pretrial detention motion was granted, keeping Pacheco in jail until trial. And that's the end of the first incident. The second incident we're covering today happened on November 25th, 2023, in the 3600 block of New Mexico 528 Northwest. The officer who fired his gun that day was Detective Angelo Lovato. Due to his sensitive type of investigative work he does, we're not displaying his photo today. He's an auto theft unit. He was hired in 2003 by the Albuquerque Police Department. He does have one prior officer-involved shooting, and at this time, he is active and back to work. The person that was shot by the officers was 36-year-old Albuquerque resident Pete Jacob Martinez, who was 36 years old. This incident took place in the Northwest Area Command, and it began at Kohl's department store right near Coors and Ellison Northwest. During a shoplifting operation during the holiday time, which targeted shoplifting at retail centers in Albuquerque, a sergeant with the Northwest Area Command was contacted by Kohl's Loss Prevention about 2 individuals that were committing a felony level amount of shoplifting, which is generally over $500. The sergeant made contact with the individuals as they exited the store, and the female immediately surrendered, but the male, Martinez, fled, and while fleeing, officers on foot armed himself. Martinez ran from Kohl's to the Cold Stone Creamery, which had several customers inside. Just as a reminder, this was the Black Friday weekend, so it was a very busy time in the shopping area. After the store customers and employees exited, they told officers that the male with the gun had run out of the back of the Cold Stone Creamery and removed some of his clothing. Martinez was reacquired by officers and continued to flee from officers until he stopped just across the street in the 3600 block of 528. The distance between Kohl's and the place he stopped was approximately a quarter mile. This is video from a responding officer who did not fire but chased Martinez through the busy retail parking lot.
Albuquerque police! Get on the fucking ground! Get on the fucking ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Gun, gun, gun! Get on the ground! He has a gun, PD. He's armed in Cold Stone. He is armed with a gun. Get my rifle. Get out! Get out! Get out! Come on! Get out! Get out now! Get out now! 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 You went out the back. He's right there? Yeah, that's him. He's running southbound along Alameda. White shirt, black hoodie. He has a gun!
Before we move on, I'll just point out you can see the 2 officers in front, and that is our subject in the white shirt. We'll show you some other video in a second that's going to pick up. I just want to give you context. At the same time this foot chase is happening, the patrol sergeant is with the female half that was detained. She was identified and arrested that day as Monica Montoya. She did comply with the sergeant. She was placed into custody. As she was in custody with the sergeant, she could overhear his radio indicating the male had armed himself. She told the sergeant that Martinez, who at the time she wouldn't name at the sergeant's request, would kill himself or force others to shoot him if confronted. I'm going to play you some of that video right now. So keep in mind the foot chase is happening at the same time as this interaction.
He's gonna do it, please don't. He's gonna do it, no. He's gonna do it.
Cross your feet.
He's gonna do it, you don't understand. He's gonna do it.
What's his name? So we can talk to him. What's his
Oh,
name? So we can talk to him. What is his name?
he's not gonna go back. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. I'm telling you. I swear to God, he's
What
gonna do
is
it.
his name?
Oh my gosh.
You realize you're not helping us here. We can talk to him by name, okay?
Oh.
This is over ID from the point we left off with the foot chase. This is a different responding officer who does not fire his weapon, but does start taking over primary communications with Martinez. This video will show part of the shooting, so I'll play it for you now.
Drop the gun. Drop the gun. Drop it, bro. Drop the gun right now. Drop where you are. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Hey, bro, stay back, stay back. Don't do it. Don't do it. Hold on. Hey, Jacob. Yeah, I'm Jacob's police department, man. Talk to me, man. I need you to talk to me. I need you to talk to me. All right? I want you to put the gun down, okay? I want you to put the gun down. I want you to put the gun down. Let's slow this down, okay? Hey man, I was talking to you, okay? Can I talk to you? Hey, so, just talk to me, okay? Let's slow this down. What can I do for you right now to drop the gun? What can I do? What? You want to smoke a cigarette? So if you want a cigarette, you need to comply with me. We'll make a deal. You put that gun down, I'll give you a cigarette. But I need that compliance, okay? What? I need you to drop the gun first and then I can do that. Okay, you gotta see it from my end, man, okay? I can't go over there with the gun in your hand. I can't trust you, man. Just like you can't trust me in that aspect, okay? No, you can't. I need you to drop it for me. I need you to drop the gun for me first. Don't reach for anything. Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Don't you move right now! Don't move! Put down the gun, man! Put it down! Put it down, please! Put it down! Put it down! Put it down! Put it down, man! We want to do this peacefully. You're not gonna... We don't want to do this, okay? So put the gun down! Put the gun down! We don't want that either, man! Listen, we don't want to do this. We don't want to. No. Put down the gun there. Yeah, I got you. What did you do? Yes. All right. Okay. Hey, put the gun down. Put the gun down. 40. 124. Watch it. I got you, bro. I got you. You got the floor? Don't reach for it. Don't reach before you get it.
This is video from Detective Angelo Lovato, who does fire his weapon. The video you just saw, a different sergeant will show you his video in a second, does fire a 40mm less than lethal round at Angelo. We'll show you a couple angles of that, or not at Angelo, at Martinez. This is the lapel of the officer who fired his gun. Now he does lay down in the rocks, so you're not going to get video from him, but we're still going to play it for you so you can hear the audio.
81756.
You did
Hey, get cover behind the engine block.
43.
He's lifting the gun. Yeah, shots fired. He's lifting the gun. Don't reach for that gun.
We're going to show you the video now, and you can hear him saying he lifted the gun. We'll show you that video where you can see that arm action go up. In that detective's interview, he stated, you can see that patrol unit right there off to the right. The gun was being lifted towards that officer in that unit when he made the decision to fire. This overview is from an on-scene sergeant who utilized a 40mm less than lethal impact launcher. And in that first video you saw of him talking to him, that sergeant's right next to that main officer. The sergeant doesn't fire his firearm, but does fire the 40mm less than lethal launcher. We'll play that for you now.
Put the gun down! 40, 40, 40. 40, 40, 40. 40, 40, 40. 40 to 1. Watch it, watch it, watch it. Hit the gun on the floor. Don't reach for it. Don't reach up before you get. Don't reach. Gun on his foot. Take your hands out. 40 if he moves back towards the gun.
In this last video snippet we're going to show you is surveillance we recovered from a business nearby. This video does not have audio captured. But at the time, the dialogue between the officers is that Martinez wants a cigarette to smoke, but also just still wants to kill himself. A little bit for the timeline, the 40mm launcher is fired just before the firearm launcher. You should be able to see it in this video. This is the handgun Martinez was armed with at the time of the encounter. It did have 1 round in the chamber and 15 more rounds in its magazine. An e-trace was completed. The gun was purchased in 1995 by a resident in Colorado. We're still working on that, but those are difficult to track down after so much time has passed. There was no NIBIN leads connected to this gun at the time of testing. Life-saving measures were attempted on Martinez, but he did die on scene of a single gunshot wound to his chest. And that concludes that one. We're going to move on to the third. Final shooting we'll cover happened on December 7th, 2023 in the 4000 block of Montgomery Boulevard Northeast. The three detectives involved in this shooting all work in sensitive positions, so we're not showing their photos. The first one is Detective Justin Jones. He was hired in 2007 by the police department. He does have 4 prior officer-involved shootings, and he is back on duty. The second was Detective Raymond Marquez. He was hired by the department in 2009. He has 3 prior officer-involved shootings, and he is back on duty. And the third detective is Philip Meyer, who's been with the department since 2016. He has no prior officer-involved shootings, and he is back on duty. The person shot by officers was 32-year-old Albuquerque resident Mark Anthony Carlson. It took place in our Northeast Area Command. Apprehension detectives were assigned responsibility to arrest Carlson. He had a felony warrant for his arrest for a probation violation, and detectives in our armed robbery unit had told this apprehension unit that he was also a suspect in recent armed robberies. Detectives located Carlson at an apartment complex in the 4000 block of Montgomery Boulevard Northeast. They saw him enter the apartment about 20 minutes before detectives made the decision to come up and try to surround and barricade Carlson and ask him to surrender. Detectives observed as they were making announcements to him to surrender that he climbed out of a second-story window and then jumped from the ledge and started to flee on foot away from detectives. Carlson armed himself during this foot chase and refused multiple commands to drop the gun and surrender. A 40mm less than lethal launcher was fired approximately 3 times, and we believe at this time at least one of those projectiles did strike Carlson, but he continued to flee armed. As he ran around an apartment building, he turned and pointed the gun directly at detectives, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. Sorry, I should have hit those as I was talking, but that's the path that he took through the apartment complex. This is lapel video from Detective Marquez, who was given announcements as this incident started, and who does fire his weapon. We'll play that for you now.
Mark Carlson, I need you to exit the front door with your hands up and empty and follow commands. If you do not follow commands and attempt to flee, force will be used against you.
This is a still shot from the video you just saw, showing Mr. Carlson turning and pointing the firearm in the direction of the detectives. This is the lapel video from Detective Meyer, who does fire his weapon. In his video, you can see Mark jump from the second-story window in that brown building kind of off to the left in an attempt to escape custody. We'll play that for you now.
Put his hands up! He's going down!
40.
Get down! Get on the ground! 40 him! He's running! Running! Get on the fucking ground now! Stand it! 40 him! 40 him! 40 him!
Get on the ground!
Get on the fucking ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground now! 40 him!
This is a still shot from that video we just showed you, showing Carlson climbing and then jumping off out of the second-story window of the residence he was in. This photograph we took shows the firearm laying nearby the area Carlson was shot. There was one round in the chamber, but none in the magazine. This firearm, we believe, was actually damaged during the shooting. One of our projectiles appears to have struck the firearm, destroying the trigger and the frame, and in the process actually obliterating the serial number. We're still working to recover a different serial number on the weapon if we can. Approximately 4 40mm less than lethal impact launcher munitions were fired. This is a photo showing one of those munitions laying on the gravel area of the apartments. This shows a separate one of those munitions, and this shows a third. The vehicle Carlson had been seen driving that day was found to be reported as stolen. Eight .223 casings were located that were fired from police that day. And again, approximately 3 or 4 40mm impact launcher rounds were found on scene. An E-trace and NIBIN functionality have not been able to be completed because of the damage to the firearm. We are still trying to see what testing can be done and if we can identify the serial number in other ways, but at this time, we still don't have that information. Life-saving measures were attempted on Carlson, and he was transported to the University of New Mexico Hospital, where he was pronounced deceased from multiple gunshot wounds. And in all 3 cases over the next several months, the multi-agency task force will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. Detectives will interview any new witnesses that come forward and complete any forensic test. After the investigation is complete, the case will be forwarded to the district attorney's office to make any determination of criminal charges. APD's Internal Affairs Force Division will also investigate the shooting to determine whether the department's policies were followed. The results of the administrative investigation will be forwarded to the city's Superintendent of Police Reform to make final decisions on discipline. APD's Force Review Board, made up of deputy chiefs and commanders, will also review the incident to identify trends and potential policy changes that may be needed in response to any shortcomings that are identified.
You know, and there's a couple things I want to just talk about real quick before we go on and take questions. And, you know, there's a lot of lessons learned last week in federal court, and there's some recommendations about us explaining things a little bit better and making sure that we give the public more information in terms of these officer-involved shootings and what some of the meanings are. If you notice, Kyle changed the saying towards Force Review's role at the end of what he talked about as compared to the rest, because we had a recent settlement agreement change where the Force Review Board no longer determines whether a case was in policy or out of policy. There's a number of reasons why this occurred, but the use of force is actually investigated through IA Force Division, and any areas related to the use of force, such as de-escalation or other parts, are forwarded to professional standards. And those determinations and those findings are completed and done before Force Review Board would see the case, so they wouldn't go back and be able to change discipline because of timelines. Zach, is that about as accurate as that could be?
It is, Chief.
And then the other thing that we wanted to talk about is there's always a lot of questions. We know we're under a settlement agreement for excessive force with individuals experiencing mental health episode, and we do have in one of these shootings an individual who we see at one point in time is threatening suicide, and it may bring individuals to believe, well, this person was under a mental health crisis. We have our commander of the CIU unit here, and we're going to let him address the topic and talk about what we know about these situations. And is it really somebody under a mental health crisis, or is it somebody who's made some decisions and the consequences are upon them at this point in time?
Hi everybody, I'm Matt Dietzel. I run the Crisis Intervention Division here at APD. So that includes response to mental health, training on mental health, and some follow-up and assistance work. What I want to do is kind of draw a line between someone who's suicidal as a result of a mental health diagnosis and someone who's suicidal as a result of the circumstances that they're in. So somebody who's suicidal as a result of a mental health crisis or a behavioral health crisis, it's going to look a little bit different in most cases. So you may have somebody who's suffering from major depression. It's a slow progression. They're looking down a dark tunnel. it's kind of you cut yourself off. It's a private thing. Then compared to this situation, which the department believes this is a clear situation where you have someone suicidal as a result of the situation that they're in. Looking back at the presentation, you had an individual who was armed with a firearm, who we believed had been to prison, as evidenced by the video, had fled police, but before all that had conducted a felony shoplifting. This all combined together leads us to believe that this was not a mental health crisis. This is an important distinction. Now, we don't know Mr. Martinez's mental health history. There's lots of protections for health care and diagnosis, rightly so. The investigation may or may not reveal that. I strongly doubt it, given those protections. But at this time, I could find no record anywhere in APD's files that this individual, Mr. Martinez, suffered from mental health history. Generally, it's very obvious in our histories. The last thing I want to talk about is anyone who's followed officer-involved shootings kind of realizes that officers are increasingly encountering individuals who, for whatever reason, are armed with a firearm and threatening themselves. This has been a thing we're seeing more and more and more of. Beginning this year, we're going to train on that scenario specifically and give officers an additional tool to try to use in that situation. And I'm not going to stand up here and act like that's going to stop all of the shootings of this type. These are crisis situations. People are emotional. It's life and death stuff. We're going to give them one more tool in an attempt to save lives. That's all I have, Chief.
You know, and I think it's important that we really talk about those distinctions, because a lot of times the community, you know, they read remarks put by others that are untrained, or other people work to push their agenda, but these are difficult situations, and officers are forced to make decisions, life and death decisions, in a matter of seconds. And as you go through each videos, and everybody will have them, and you'll be able to put them on slow motion and do whatever you need to do to look at it, you'll clearly see where, you know, these situations are just magnified by the fact that we have so many armed individuals. And to me, the most shocking part is the fact that most of these individuals are retrieving the firearm after officers are already in pursuit of them, which really leads to ask a lot of questions of officers are going to be asking, is their intent at the time, because they've retrieved it. One of the other things I just want to talk about is less lethal options. A lot of times, you know, we're seeing that we have frustrations. We know that we talked about earlier last week where we are looking at different options other than the 40. We had 140 deployed 4 times here. The 40 is an impact weapon, but the reason the 40 is used as opposed to a taser is in some of these situations you will see that the distance for the use of a taser is beyond our abilities to utilize the taser. The taser has limited distance as opposed to a 40, but we're hoping that the advent of technology and us being able to incorporate the newest version of taser, that we'll be able to expand the usage of it. But we are aware of it, but it is better to have a tool that is capable to work outside of the ranges of our current tasers and capabilities than to have no tool at all, even though it may not at times be the most optimal tool. We're not the only law enforcement agency going through this. This is something that every agency across the nation, big or small, is going through, with the limitations that we have on less lethal and what their capabilities are. Some of the things I want to talk about that we haven't seen in the past, or that I could really, that sometimes were questions that we've had to work to correct. In one of these incidents, you see here clear orders by one officer on the scene speaking to the individual and talking to him. I know that there's been questions in the past about, you know, well, all the officers are screaming, what's the person supposed to think? I think this goes to show us how we identify trends through Force Review Board, and as Matt spoke about, seeing these trends now, we're very quick in making, developing a training to correct some of those. So those are some of the things that we've worked on in the past, on making sure that we have one person out there who's delivering commands, one person who's a force array. All these things are advents to our how we respond to some of these cases through the process of this settlement agreement. And just the last thing I want to talk about is, like, our officers really slowed down a lot of situations, and they did have some limited success in negotiating and de-escalating the situations. But unfortunately, we'll never know what's in the mindset of some of these individuals and what turns these situations to the point where they become deadly force incidents. But We will continue to be as transparent as possible. We will work in the future, like I stated. One of the biggest lessons learned in court was the fact that we should really work on emphasizing, and we're going to be working on a presentation in the near future to the community to talk about use of force. What is encaptured in when we talk about use of force within policy is at an all-time high, and what does that look like? So we do want to give more community education to the use of force topic, and we learned some takeaways last week, and we're going to make sure that we honor the system and that we do a better job at explaining the situations to the community. With that, we'll go to questions.
Chief, as we saw in the first two shootings, the guns were stolen in other states and brought here. The third one you guys are still investigating. Is this something you're seeing more often, and how is this concerning?
You know, this is, and if you even look back to the shooting of our officer outside of the location on Central, that was also a firearm that came from another state. And that goes to show the distance that these firearms can travel to get to somewhere where they are being reduced in crime. One of the criticisms we always hear is when a new law takes into effect that it isn't as effective as we hoped it was. And I think that one of the things we have to remember is all these guns were stolen, with the exception of one, most of them were stolen over 5 years ago. And I'm hoping that some of the recent legislation from the years past, and specifically background checks that passed, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, that eventually that's going to catch up. We know the time frame of a firearm in the world of criminality sometimes is about 7 years, is one of the statistics I heard before it comes about. So I'm hoping that after 7 years that the background requirement is in place, that we'll be able to track guns better, because there'll have to be a documented history, or we'll have a last person who should have had that firearm, that if they didn't exchange it properly, that we could hold accountable for that portion.